On the 17th of July, AD 122, an auxiliary cavalryman named Gemellus received 2 inscribed bronze plates. They preserved a copy of an imperial grant. After 25 years in Roman service, he had become a Roman citizen. Each panel measured roughly 16.5 centimeters high. The document was compact enough to remain among a veteran's private possessions, but it carried an emperor's decision. That change was legally powerful. Gemellus could carry the document away from his unit and use it to prove that the grant applied to him. Yet the plates settled only the matter written into them. No land was assigned, while his future income and place of residence remained undecided. Rome had changed Gemellus in law. It had not built a civilian life for him. That gap creates the central question of this story. When a Roman soldier completed decades of service, what did the state actually provide, and which decisions still belonged to the veteran? The first problem lies in the number engraved into Gemellus's record. 25 years sounds like a standard Roman retirement term. It was not. The meaning of that number depended on the branch in which a man served and the status he possessed when he enlisted. Gemellus belonged to the auxiliary. These units recruited many men who entered the army without Roman citizenship. During the early empire, 25 years became the term commonly associated with honorable release and the citizenship grant received by auxiliary veterans. A legionary began from a different legal position. He was already a Roman citizen, so the army could not offer citizenship as his main retirement reward. In AD 5, Augustus fixed 20 years as the regular term for ordinary legionary soldiers. A legionary still serving in his 25th year had therefore passed the stated requirement, sometimes because the army retained experienced men beyond the nominal term. Service in the imperial fleets followed another timetable. Surviving evidence often places the minimum at 26 years. A sailor who had completed 25 years might still be waiting for the final year that made him eligible for release. Praetorians followed a shorter official term, adding another timetable to the system. Roman military service was counted by unit and legal status rather than one universal rule. The number therefore changed meaning with the branch. In the auxiliary army, it could mark the threshold connected with citizenship. For a legionary, it might reveal that release had been delayed. A fleet sailor could remain short of the normal requirement. 25 years also measured service, not age. Recruits did not all enlist at the same point in life, and some men stayed longer than the official term. Others left early because illness, injury, or discipline ended their service. The phrase, "a Roman soldier after 25 years," hides these differences. Before asking what such a man received, we must identify which army he belonged to and what kind of release the state was prepared to recognize. Even when the required count was complete, the camp gate did not open automatically. Roman law did not treat every departure through the camp gate as the same event. A soldier who completed the required term and received an honorable release kept his claim to the rewards attached to long service. His military obligation ended with recognized veteran status. A man who became unfit could leave before reaching the normal term. Illness or injury did not place him in the same position as someone expelled for misconduct. But medical release was not simply another name for completing service. Its practical benefits could depend on the period and on how much service he had already performed. Disciplinary dismissal produced the hardest result. The army released the soldier because of an offense, and the departure carried disgrace. He could not demand the privileges that belonged to honorable service merely because he had crossed the gate for the last time. Roman jurists later described these outcomes as honesta missio, missio causaria, and missio ignominiosa. The labels came after the decisive difference, why the man had been released. Even the best outcome required authorization. Earlier military diplomas could grant privileges to men who had completed the necessary years, but had not yet been formally discharged. The bronze tablets were therefore not originally identical to modern discharge papers. By the time Gemellus received his diploma in AD 22, such documents were normally associated with veterans who had obtained honorable release. but the state still had to turn elapsed time into a recognized change of status. That step could be delayed. During the mutinies of AD 14, Tacitus presents soldiers complaining that some men had endured 30 or 40 campaigns. Veterans claimed that an altered title had left them performing the same work under the standards after their expected term was over. The complaint came from a mutiny and cannot describe every unit. It reveals the conflict created when an official service limit existed on paper, while the army continued to need experienced manpower. For Gemellus 25 years became retirement only when the army recognized an honorable end to his service. Once that happened, his bronze document could affect people who had never stood in the ranks. The most consequential effect of a military diploma could fall on people who had never served. Many soldiers formed households while stationed far from their birthplace. A partner might live near the fort, and children could be born while their father remained under military discipline. The family existed in daily life, but Roman law did not necessarily treat it as a valid Roman marriage. For much of the 1st and 2nd centuries, ordinary soldiers were prohibited from contracting such a marriage during service. The rule did not stop relationships from forming. Papyri and inscriptions preserve evidence of soldiers acknowledging partners and children, even though the state denied those unions the full legal consequences of marriage. Honorable discharge could change that position. A non-citizen auxiliary veteran received Roman citizenship, while the diploma also granted connubium. This was the legal capacity to form a marriage recognized by Roman law with the woman covered by the grant. The formula normally applied to one woman. She could be the partner present when citizenship was awarded or a woman the veteran married later. Connubium did not automatically grant citizenship to every member of the household. It established the legal basis for a recognized union. Children raised a more difficult question. Before AD 140, the general formula used in auxiliary diplomas could extend citizenship to children who already existed when their father was discharged, including children born during his service. A bronze document could therefore alter the legal position of the next generation at the same moment that it changed the veteran's own status. Under Antoninus Pius, that result was narrowed. By the 13th of December AD 140, auxiliary diploma formulas no longer included children born during their father's military service in the general citizenship grant. The father could leave as a Roman citizen while a child already living in his household did not receive the same automatic result. The change did not reach every branch at once. Fleet veterans continued to receive citizenship provisions for existing children after the auxiliary formula had changed. Roman retirement law still depended on the unit in which a man had served. The marriage restriction itself was later removed or substantially relaxed under Septimius Severus, probably around AD 97. The exact legal mechanism remains disputed, so the change cannot be treated as a single order that instantly repaired every military household. A broader transformation followed in AD 212, when Caracalla extended citizenship to all or almost all free inhabitants of the empire. After that decision, citizenship could no longer function as the same distinctive reward for a non-citizen auxiliary completing service. Gemellus received his diploma in AD 122, before the change of 140. He belonged to an earlier legal landscape in which military service could reshape the status of a veteran's existing family. The document could change a household's legal future. It could not provide the income that household needed. Citizenship could change a household's legal future. It could not buy the next supply of grain. For a citizen legionary, the clearest retirement promise was a single payment of 12,000 sesterces after 20 years of service. A Praetorian completing 16 years was assigned 20,000. The money arrived as a discharge reward, not as an income that continued for the rest of the veteran's life. That payment solved more than a financial problem. During the late Republic, commanders had often secured land or money for their own soldiers. A successful settlement rewarded the men, but it also strengthened their loyalty to the general who had obtained it. Augustus needed the emperor and the state to stand behind the promise instead. His own public account records the change. Augustus paid communities for land assigned to veterans, then increasingly used cash when discharged soldiers returned to their hometowns. In Ad 6, he transferred 170 million sesterces from his private wealth into a new military treasury. Its purpose was to fund rewards for soldiers who had completed 20 or more years. The system still did not offer one package to every branch. Legionaries and Praetorians received the formal Augustan cash bounty. Auxiliary veterans such as Gemellus were not normally included in that payment. Their defining reward was citizenship, although they could leave with savings accumulated from military pay. Land remained another possibility, but it was never an automatic field, waiting for every discharged man. Large veteran colonies were especially associated with the civil wars and the early Augustan settlement. Later emperors still founded colonies or moved groups of veterans, while many others received money and arranged their own future. Even an official land grant could disappoint. In Tacitus's account of the mutiny of Ad 14, soldiers complained that supposed farms turned out to be waterlogged marshes or uncultivated mountainsides. The speech belongs to a crisis, not a census of veteran property, but the grievance exposes a practical limit. A grant was valuable only when the land could support its new owner. Gemellus's bronze plates recorded citizenship. They did not name a cash sum or mark out a farm. Once a state had paid or certified what it owed, the veteran still had to find a place where the reward could become a livelihood. The place where a soldier had enlisted was not always the place to which he returned. Some veterans went back to their original communities. Others entered colonies established by the state. Many remained near the fortress or fort where they had spent most of their adult lives. By then, the surrounding settlement could contain their household and the people on whom they relied. These were not empty spaces outside a wall. A civilian community usually developed beside a permanent military base. Settlements near legionary fortresses were commonly called canabae. Those attached to auxiliary forts were usually known as vici, although Roman usage did not keep the distinction perfectly consistent. The people living there supplied the garrison and built their own local economy. Traders sold goods to soldiers, while craftsmen worked for military and civilian customers. Partners and children of serving men also lived outside the walls. Veterans joined communities that had already grown around the army. Remaining near the fort could therefore be a calculated decision. A veteran understood the local market and the military supply routes that fed it. His family might already have a home there. Returning to a distant birthplace could mean abandoning the strongest network he possessed. Retirement also did not force every man into farming. Soldiers had worked as clerks, builders, transport specialists, and suppliers during their service. Their chances after discharge still depended on rank and experience, but the army could provide skills with value outside the ranks. A papyrus from Roman Egypt makes one route visible. The auxiliary veteran Marcus Julius Valerianus used the citizenship gained through service to purchase land reserved for Roman citizens. In his case, a legal reward became a property transaction. Marcus Cyrus followed another path. He had come from Gerasa and served 26 years as a marine at Misenum. After receiving citizenship in AD 71, he lived in Pompeii. His diploma was found in a workshop residence, stored in an alcove beside the place where he worked and slept. The document had traveled far from his birthplace and outlived the business that surrounded it. Cyrus had no standard legionary cash bounty, yet he entered a civilian trade in Italy rather than returning to Gerasa. Cases like these survive because documents and buildings survived with them. A veteran who left no inscription or property record is harder to recover, so the evidence cannot provide one typical career. It does show that retirement was not a return to an earlier life. The veteran had to turn military income and legal status into a position inside an existing community. For some men, the strongest community still remained inside the army. A veteran who had already completed his service could receive a personal summons from a commander and choose to return. During the late Republic, these re-enlisted men were known as evacati. Their experience could bring higher standing and exemption from some routine fatigue duties. They were valued veterans, not members of one permanent elite formation. Under the Empire, the title Evocatus Augusti developed a more specialized meaning. Former Praetorians could be retained after their normal service for administrative or technical work. This continuing imperial role was different from the temporary republican practice of veterans answering a commander's call. Returning did not prove that civilian life had defeated them. Continued service offered familiar employment and could preserve a useful relationship with a powerful commander. The army received an experienced man without training another recruit from the beginning. Long service could also leave physical damage. Roman law recognized missio causaria, a release for someone judged unfit in mind or body. That rule proves that illness and impairment could end a military career, but it does not provide a medical profile of the veteran population. Violence could leave fear, grief, disturbed sleep, or lasting distress. Post-traumatic stress disorder is a modern clinical diagnosis, and historians disagree about applying it to ancient people whose symptoms were never recorded in clinical terms. Roman sources support caution rather than a diagnosis for every veteran, and Evocatus shows that the army continued to value trained experience. He cannot explain why every returning veteran made that choice. Return to the 2 bronze plates issued to Gemellus in Ad 122. They preserve the day Rome recognized an auxiliary cavalryman as a citizen after 25 years of service. The grant also regulated his right to form a legally recognized marriage. The plates do not reveal whether he purchased land or remained near his former unit. They cannot tell us whether he entered a civilian trade or later returned to military work. Between Ad 14 and 212, one modern estimate places the number of soldiers and children who gained citizenship through military grants at roughly 900,000 to 1.6 million. Each grant connected another provincial household to Roman law, but it did not produce one standard retirement. Gemellus's bronze plates preserve the decision that changed his status. What he did after carrying them away was never written on the bronze.